inshallah 84 to 88.
Sure. 4 to 88. Let's get there. 4. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإلى مدين أخاهم شعيبا قال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره ولا تنقصوا المكيال والميزان إني أراكم بخير وإني أخاف عليكم عذاب يوم محيط ويا قوم أوفوا المكيال والميزان بالقسط ولا تبخسوا الناس أشياءهم ولا تعثوا في الأرض مفسدين بقية الله خير لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين وما أنا عليكم بحفيظ قالوا يا شعيب أصلاتك تأمرك أن نترك ما يعبد آباؤنا أو أن نفعل في أموالنا ما نشاء إنك لأنت الحليم الرشيد قال يا قوم أرأيتم إن كنتم على بينة من ربي ورزقني منه رزقا حسنا وما أريد أن أخالفكم إلى ما أنهاكم عنه إن أريد إلا الإصلاح ما استطعت وما توفيقي إلا بالله عليه توكلت وإليه أنيب سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
أحسنت. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل
على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your efforts, inshallah. All of us, allow us to be amongst those who recite and reflect on the ayat of the Holy Quran and implement what we learn, inshallah. We continue on reflecting on the ayat of Surah Hud. Surah Hud, as we said, is one of the surahs or chapters that were revealed during the time before the migration. Therefore, it is considered Makki. Not necessarily in Mecca every verse. When we say Makki, it means it was revealed before the migration to Medina. And as these surahs or chapters typically deal with the core principles of Islam, therefore the surah deals with the revelation of the Quran being a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, confirmation of the revelation, reference about the book being elaborated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every part of it, أحكمت آياته ثم فصلت, as in the beginning of the surah, and deals with or reminders about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, and the importance of maintaining our worship to only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obedience to Him and only Him, or every obedience through obedience to Him. And obviously the revelation confirms the message or the messenger. The message is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, therefore the message is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, therefore the carrier or the messenger is a true apostle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the typical theme, as we reflected in also Surah Yunus previously, is to use previous nations as examples. And as we said, the Prophet is Bashiran wa Nadiran. He is a warner and the bearer of good news, or the bearer of good news in the order of the words, and the warner, Nadir. And therefore, he promises, he tells the people of what is to come should they be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also, and therefore promises them paradise and all the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also the rewards here, living a better life here. And on the contrary, if they were to disobey, deny the message, deny the messenger, that they would be struggling and suffering, and eventually they would be facing the torment of hell. However, it all starts here. And someone has a question?
No, I think we'll just do this journey.
Awesome. So again, in this surah, we had examples of previous nations, and the last example, we went through the people of Lut and how their denial led to their destruction, complete destruction of their city, turning upside down, عَالِيَهَا سَافِلَهَا, completely destroyed, and the people obviously completely, basically every one of them except the believers who had left, everybody who stayed back were included in those who were destroyed or finished. The next example is the example of another city called Madian. And the people of Madian were sent a messenger, his name Shu'aib. Now the very unique aspect about this particular group of people is that their most common sin or common problem that was addressed by their messenger, and perhaps because of its significance, or how how wrong they were in that area, this was the first thing that was mentioned in the ayah after the worshipping of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as we reflected on the people of Lut, for example, their messenger was inviting them to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obedience to God, and to change their ways. They had they were most astray or most wrong, and their most common sin had to do with their relationship. Instead of marriage, they had the relationships that they had, and therefore that became the most common theme, and that eventually brought the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon them. These people, on the other hand, their biggest issue was how they did their business transactions. So after the messenger says to them, he says, or the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses or mentions from the words of their messenger Shu'aib, قال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره ولا تنقصوا المكيال والميزان. So first, أخاهم شعيبا, we said أخاهم in reference to the fact that he is from amongst them. So he's referred to as their brother, as in their one of them, one of these people. They are they're considered his nation. Not necessarily like the brother as in the blood brother, or the brother of every single one of them as in having that same father or same mother, rather one of them. So that's one. The second thing is instead of saying Qawm Shu'aib or the people that lived in Madian, they were referred to as Madian, although the city is Madian. However, the people were referred to as Madian. And this is in Arabic, it is common in the science of balagha or eloquence. It is considered a beautiful style to basically not elaborate so much because it's obvious. So he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِلَى مَدْيَنَ أَخَاهُمْ شُعَيْبًا قَالَ, immediately comes to what he was inviting them to. So the first thing is, أَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ, obey God, worship God. And ibadah includes obedience. If one is doing some rituals but not being obedient, they're not really worshipping God. So rituals without obedience are not really ibadah. اعبدوا الله. And then he says, ما لكم من إله غيره. You have no deity or God besides him. That اعبدوا الله should suffice. However, ما لكم من إله غيره is a further emphasis, and especially basically emphasizing on the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unity or the oneness. Because one could say Ubudullah, at the same time you could also obey or worship someone else or something else. Here he's emphasizing that Ubudullah ma lakum min ilahin ghayruh. It's similar to when we say La ilaha illallah. So denying every deity or every thing that is worthy of obedience or worshipping other than God, and then confirming the oneness. La ilaha, denying every deity except illallah. Here, u'budullaha, worship the God. Ma lakum min ilahin ghayruh. You have no God besides him. The first thing afterwards, وَلَا تَنْقُصُوا الْمِكْيَالَ وَالْمِيزَانَ. And do not diminish, do not do not basically decrease in your measure. Both, he says, or naqs is when you're short of something, when you give less, to be short in your measurement or in the weight. So he then emphasizes or confirms both types of measures. Sometimes you measure by volume, other times you might measure by weight. He says, وَلَا تَنْقُصُوا الْمِكْيَالَ وَالْمِيزَانَ. Do not short sell or in your transactions decrease in the measure of the volume or the weight. Either way. So what I mean is sometimes you might measure certain things by a certain container. Okay, so you say, for instance, you want 3 of this size container, for example, 3 bowls of this. Sometimes you might measure things or by bags, for example. You know, you have so in quantity, basically, not the weight. Sometimes you might say, okay, 3 bags of this particular product. Other times it could be the measure is putting it on a scale and weighing it. Regardless of the volume of it, the weight of it is what you are doing the transaction by. So he says, do not short sell or decrease in your measure, both the volume, mikyal, and the weight, mizan. ولا تنقصوا المكيال والميزان. Now, an interesting fact is that normally you don't decrease or increase not the scale itself or the unit itself. You decrease or people may do the wrong measurements in terms of the item that is put in on the scale or put in the container that they are selling. They're using it as the measure to sell. However, the ayah says the ayah skips the items. And again, this is considered what we call ikhtisar, to just say less when the meaning is clear. This is one of the beauties of the Holy Quran and how it's basically, even when there is elaboration, when it's mentioned fully, then we know that there is a reason. This is why it's very important to really understand the Quran through those who have studied the Quran and not just read it and make assumptions, and as some do. Because even if the Quran uses the style of being succinct or very brief in mentioning something or being elaborate, in mentioning further details about it, even that has a meaning. Even that has to be analyzed and reflected upon to understand why did, in this case, for example, we have, it's just very brief, very simple terms. Even it doesn't say don't underweigh what you put in the mizan. He says don't underweigh the mizan, the scale itself. And that's again, it is acceptable as a statement in Arabic. It's not wrong, but it's also considered to be brief. And again, whenever it's not brief, there is any level of elaboration, it has a significance. It's not just the fact that God decided in this situation to say more and in another situation to say less. And so our Mufassirin, they study every detail of the words and even a letter. In some of you may be aware in the ayah that refers to wudu, for example, there is one letter that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt explain how this one letter, B, is the reason why we don't need to wipe every part of our head when we are doing masah. So the ayah says, وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ. Some of our brothers, our Sunni brothers generally, when they do the masah, I'm not sure if you've witnessed or if you're familiar, they kind of do a masah of the full thing. They even go around the ears and the full head. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt, and again, the assumption is that it's for cleaning. you do this masah for cleaning. But the reality is when you're wiping, you're not really, if there is any dirt or any, if there are any germs, you're spreading them. It needs to be washed unless you're wiping with some sort of a disinfectant or something. But again, the purpose of wudu is not the physical cleanliness. We're supposed to be clean, and we're supposed to remove any kind of obstacle or barrier before the wiping. So the purpose of it is the spiritual activity or purification, and in connection with the body for a reason, which inshallah another time we can go through that. However, the Imam, when he was asked to explain about why, how do we do the mask, he explained that the ba is why. It is bi ru'usikum, instead of the ayah saying wamsahu ru'usakum, it could have said wamsahu ru'usakum. Instead of that, it says bi ru'usikum. And so the Imam clarifies that bi for ba'd, some. Instead of saying wipe your head, it's saying wipe some of your head. So the letter is enough to give that meaning or add that elaboration. Again, every letter matters, and every elaboration also matters. So he says, وَلَا تَنْقُصُ الْمِكْيَالَ وَالْمِيزَانَ. Again, this particular story, although the main purpose of those stories, if you recall, we said is what? Addressing the people of the Prophet ﷺ, telling them to make sure they understand if they deny their messenger, the result could be similar to these people. So the main reason all these nations are mentioned is to warn the people against denying their messenger, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is the main purpose. The types of sins become further teachings, further reminders, and each one of those things are important to keep in mind and learn and implement those lessons that we learn in our lives. However, the main theme is that we need to obey the messenger. We need to accept his message, obey the messenger. That is basically the main goal behind mentioning every one of those nations and those stories. In this story, after the confirmation or the messenger reminding his people, after reminding them about only worshipping God and only the one and only one, and denying other deities or other idols or idols in general, not other idols, denying any idols. After that, the concept that is introduced is the transactions, business transactions and buying and selling, and how they should measure, give the right measure to the people, be fair in their measure, and give the right weight if they are putting things on the scale. Al-mikyala wal-mizan. Then he says, Inni arakum bi khayrin. I see you in good. Here there are different possibilities and different suggestions for this. One is that I see you bi khayr. He's saying, almost like I'm looking at you and wanting goodness for you. So almost like another term in Arabic that is typically used in this situation is أريد لكم. I want goodness for you. So what I'm saying to you is out of care for you. I am saying it because I want the best for you. This is one possibility. Another possibility is that I am seeing you in goodness. There is no need for you to be dishonest or to be basically take something that is not yours, since you're comfortable, you're living good, you have good things in general, or even not just good, living good in material things. The third option or possibility is that overall you are blessed. Khair here referring to overall blessings. So as we said, one option is that I want the best for you, arakum bi khair, as I'm seeing what is best for you. Another option is that I'm seeing that I can see that you are living comfortably. You have you have good things in life. Abundance is good in itself. Obviously, if it's not, which often leads to problems, because people feel sufficiency, they don't feel the need to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why Quran says, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى أَن رَآهُ اسْتَغْنَى. So insan transgresses when he feels that he is sufficient, or he does not have need to God, or he doesn't have to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So generally speaking, in itself, having what we need and more is a good thing, unless people do not appreciate it, and therefore they don't feel the necessary gratitude that they should have to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and turning to Him instead, they transgress, they become sinful. So generally speaking, that is a good thing. That is one of the good things. However, inni arakum bi khair could be further, could be more. It could be also the fact that you have, for instance, the intellect, okay, the ability to hear me, the ability to understand, to comprehend the message, to understand what I'm saying to you in terms of what you should do and what you should not do. In terms of transactions, the fact that you're capable of even transacting and weighing and scaling and all of these things, these are all blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore appreciate that. I'm seeing all this good that you have, appreciated. And then he says, وَإِنِّي أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ مُحِيطٍ. I am fearful for you. I fear for you the torment of a day, muhit, basically encompassing. So sometimes, and this is one of the very, very important lessons from this particular ayah and from many ayats of the Holy Quran, about when we allow injustice in our society, it doesn't just strike, or the effect of it, the consequences of it, the torment that comes as a result of that, doesn't just hit or strike the ones who are committing it. It is encompassing. وَاتَّقُوا فِتْنَةً, in another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, clarifying this, He says, be careful of a fitna that does not strike only the oppressors. لا تصيبن الذين ظلموا منكم خاصة. It doesn't just hit or strike the ones who oppressed, it actually includes everyone, all those around. Now you might say, why? What about the innocent ones? They either did not enjoin good or forbid evil, or remained there that remaining in that environment, knowing that this is what is happening around me and I can't do anything about it, okay, leave. But staying there makes us subject to whatever consequences that action is going to bring. If, for instance, if we live in a certain, so subhanAllah, I don't know if the news have come to the community in Orlando. However, in Tampa Bay, one of the young boys in the community yesterday, I believe, yes, it was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, a young boy was shot and passed, 15, 16-year-old boy, and basically living in a neighborhood that was not the best neighborhood. This family, migrant family that came and both parents perhaps working and trying to provide a better life for their children, but being in the area that they were may subjected them to eventually losing their son. Now apparently the community is trying to help them so that they're no longer living in that neighborhood. There are other details that one has to consider, but one of the problems is basically where they were living. The bottom line is, you live amongst a certain people, you are going to be affected by what goes on in that area and neighborhood, and so that is the immediate effect. There are obviously other effects that may not appear immediately. They may take longer, or we may not even perceive them as a problem. If our children are growing in an environment where there is no acknowledgement of God, for instance, or there's denial of God, and there's so much about material things and materialism, they will become materialist themselves, and that may not appear as a problem to many parents, unfortunately. So these are things to consider when we are in a certain area, because the consequences don't affect one person. As human beings, subhanAllah, this lesson that came to us so clear during COVID, how it spread in the world, all human beings became subjects to it in no time. That's how much we affect each other. Maybe in the old days, because of the time it took to travel before airplanes and before cars and trains and so on, the travel was much slower, and therefore maybe the speed of spreading diseases was less. It would strike one area, not every part of the world. Nowadays, we're so much more connected, and so we affect each other so much more. If we allow oppression to happen around us, like unfortunately nowadays is happening, a man-made famine is occurring in Gaza nowadays, and again, I say, regardless of our political alliances and who we agree or disagree with, there's no doubt that what is going on now is simply wrong, and we should not allow something like this to continue happening in such a world that we're living, the global village that we're living. To see it happening day in, day out, it is a shameful situation, and that is something that would bring the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it could be encompassing, adab yawmin muhit. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us and protect us from being subjects of such torment. So he says, وَإِنِّي أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ مُحِيطٍ. Another beautiful lesson in this ayah is how the messenger is so compassionate, so loving for his people. He's not judgmental of them. You know, so many of us, when we see people who are sinful, okay, it's almost like we want them wiped out of the face of the earth. You know, we exclude them from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so quickly. And the messengers of God, on the other hand, they pray for them. They want what's best for them. Inni arakum bi khair. So one of the meanings we said, Inni arakum bi khair, is that not that I see you, surely I see you in goodness, but I surely I want what's best for you. One of the meanings we said that could be one of the meanings of that. And so he wants what's best for them, and at the same time he is also fearful for them. You know, he cares for them, he wants what's best for them. وَإِنِّي أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ مُحِيطٍ. Similar to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In fact, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was expressed or had the highest level of love and kindness and mercy, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described him as rahmatan lil alameen, a mercy to the worlds. وَإِنِّي أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ مُحِيطٍ. Now, why يَوْمٍ مُحِيطٍ? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows certain things to go on for a reason. Lessons, chances for people who want to return. However, there is an appointed time. And when that time comes, then there's an appointed time for individuals and appointed time for even nations. And if that time comes, nothing can change it. So he also reminds them of the fact that that day could come. عذاب يوم محيط. Before we go to the next ayah, any questions or any comments on this? Ayah 84 is what we finished.
Afwan, Sheikh. Now,
Yes.
this idea about being gracious and, looking at things through the lens like the Aimma, the prophets and all had, is something that I need to work on. Maybe we need to work on. So what tips do you suggest for somebody? Like, if you see a sinner, you feel sad about them and what they're doing, but then you also want to not dislike them. You want to pray for them. You want to do things so that they are guided. So what can we do in ourselves to develop this greater sense of mercy and have a sense of, just like it was indicated in the verse, goodness for all?
Ahsant. So it's a state of mind that we need to develop. And so that normally comes with understanding. When we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we understand God, the more we understand how God is, the more we understand how merciful He is, how He introduces Himself as the merciful. You know, we said in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which is the beginning of every surah, and also the first ayah in Surah Al-Fatiha, which is the mandatory surah that we have to recite in every salat. In there he introduces himself with rahmah, with his mercy. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He does not introduce himself with any of his attributes other than ar-Rahman and ar-Rahim, the merciful, the all merciful, the ever merciful. One is more of eternal mercy, and one is encompassing mercy. So his rahmah encompasses everything, and it is eternal. So when we understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we understand that He created as out of His mercy, He created out of love and mercy. He says, إِلَّا مَنْ رَحِمَ رَبُّكَ وَلِذَلِكَ خَلَقَهُمْ. They continue to quarrel and differ. except that those who God has mercy upon. And then he says that is why he created them. So he created us for his mercy. وَلِذَلِكَ خَلَقَهُمْ. He created for his mercy. He created out of his mercy. He created out of his love. And he is the merciful. When we understand him and we understand that we should be like him, we should be we should gain nearness to him. Therefore, we should, with that understanding, we should develop more and more mercy towards everything and everyone around us. رحمته سبقت غضب. In the dua, we say, Ya man rahmatuhu, or the one whose mercy preceded his wrath. So his wrath is there as a consequence. It is literally the consequence of our actions, but his mercy is there. His mercy is the one that came before everything, before anything existed, and because of that, things exist. And so, when we understand that, the better understanding we have of God and His attributes, the more we would be merciful, the more we would develop mercy in our hearts, and that reflects obviously itself in how we see people, perceive them, and treat them eventually.
Ahsant.
Obviously, a lot could be said um, about this in terms of methods of softening the heart and how we should all work on softening the heart versus allowing our hearts to harden, because it's the hard hearts that instead of wanting goodness for people, they may a hard heart is the one that likes or enjoys the suffering of the people, regardless of who they are and what they are doing. We should always pray and hope for people to be doing good and to be guided so that they deserve good. And that's how the messengers were. So there is obviously an element of self-purification and tazkiyah to get there, including not having arrogance, including not having jealousy, and including the fact that we should not be feel any kind of superiority, for example, which is part of arrogance. So there are elements that we should work on in order to become more merciful or more kind towards the people, more understanding. One of the techniques, and the last thing I would say, inshallah, to not take so much more of your time on this, one of the techniques is to focus more on our own errors instead of looking at people and their errors. Remember that we ourselves have our own errors and challenges, perhaps in terms of purification and gaining nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So focus more on our own errors and purifying ourselves, and not be judgmental of people and their issues and their errors. This is often mentioned in the hadith that whoever focuses on their own errors, they would not have time to even look at other people's errors. There's the hadith of Imam Rida alayhi salam. He says the intellect of an individual is not complete unless they have 10 things. The last one is, whenever they look at people, they say he is better than me, or huwa khayrun minni. He or she is better than me. Better in what sense? They might have a pure heart, they may end up having a good ending. I'm being judgmental now, and I am being arrogant, and God forbid, I'll end up with those characteristics. I might end up in a much worse situation, and they end up in much better situation in the hereafter. So always consider the fact that they could be better than us, inshallah. Inshallah, we consider that fact, and inshallah, we compete over goodness. Next ayah, وَيَا قَوْمِ أَوْفُوا الْمِكْيَالَ وَالْمِيزَانَ بِالْقِسْطِ. Again, Nabiullah Shu'aib is speaking, ala nabina wa alayhi salam. He is speaking, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is from basically telling us through the words of Shu'aib what his people were being told and advised and reminded about. And so it's a reminder for us as well. Although again we said the command or the main reminder in the surah and the mention of these nations were to obey our messenger. However, those details also are lessons. Every one of those examples have lessons within them, and so we need to also consider the lessons in this story, especially regarding transactions, as it's emphasized multiple times. So, for instance, regarding the mikyal and mizan, measuring in volume or in weight, it's mentioned in ayah 84. Again, it's mentioned in ayah 85. Their prophet is telling them, first, do not decrease as you measure. Do not give people less when you're measuring, either with weighing or measuring as in the volume. Again, the same thing he mentions in ayah 85. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَا قَوْمِ أَوْفُوا الْمِكْيَالَ وَالْمِيزَانَ. First, do not short sell, do not underweigh or basically give less, decrease in your measure. That's naqs, is to come short of completion. Here he says awfu. Awfu is to complete, to give the complete measure, to give the full. Waffa is, and this is the term is similar to the loyalty. Wafa comes from that. The wafa bil ahd, when we fulfill our promise, which is actually, interestingly, the term in English also is to fulfill. Yes. And would I be assuming correctly that fulfill has something to do with filling and giving the full? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very much similar in terms of the term and its usage, because awfu comes from wafa, and wafa is the same root for or wafaya, the same root for wafa, to be to fulfill your promises, al-wafa bil-ahd. So it's and it's wafa is also one of the meanings of it is loyalty. So to fulfill your promises, fulfill your allegiance, be loyal, and here to fulfill the measure, to give full, to not give less. So in the first ayah he says don't give less. Here he says give full. Okay, you could say it's the same thing. Essentially, it leads to the same thing. If you don't give less than what you should be giving, therefore you're giving the full. So why is it? And we said anytime Quran repeats something, it is to emphasize how significant or important this is, And here the ayah is repeating it in a slightly different way again. The first one is don't give less, here to give the full. Giving the full is the goal. Not to give less is what we should avoid. So both the Amr and Nahi about the same thing, to achieve the same thing. Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi an al-Munkar. To give less is what? Munkar. To give the full is Ma'ruf. Yes? So both are there in the same concept. There's a result being the same thing. Do not give less, give the full. وأوفوا يا قوم أوفوا المكيال والميزان بالقسط. Again, further emphasis, so much emphasis, subhanallah, in this ayah. أوفوا المكيال والميزان. When you give the full, you're being what? You're being fair. You're establishing justice. Qist is the establishment of justice, is to be fair, to do the right thing. Okay. So he says, أوفوا المكيال والميزان بالقسط. Fulfill it and be fair, or with fairness. So all of this again to emphasize the importance of this matter. Why? Because the opposite of that is creating mischief, spreading all sorts of corruption and mischief in the society. Yes, it would create eventually quarrels and fights and killings and bloodshed and all sorts of problems, all stemming from simple transactions that we might think, okay, I might gain a little bit here or there. So he says, وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُم. Again, almost the same thing is being repeated. And Amr and Nahi in the same ayah. We said in the previous ayah, he says, لَا تَنْقُصُوا, do not give less. And in this ayah, he says, give the full. And then in the same ayah, 85, وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا. And bakhs is, one of the meanings of bakhs is to give less. Or another meaning is to consider less significant. So one of the meanings of this term, which is often mentioned, or we are often reminded of it in business transactions, in the Arabic, in the world of, or the Muslim world, or the Arab, the world where they understand the term, we are reminded of it often. If you are describing, or if you are basically suggesting that something is not so good, so that you can pay less for it, okay, and you're being not truthful about it, okay, that is tabkhasun nasa ashya'ahum. So people come trying to sell you something. Now one could say, I'm giving the full measure and I'm not underweighing, okay, as I'm buying something, I'm not underweighing, I'm giving the full measure. But what about the price? Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not leave any room for ambiguity and for people to be unfair or unjust in transactions using some loopholes, for instance. We had obviously the weighing has to be right, the measuring has to be right, and now in terms of pricing, let's say you have A grade, B grade, C grade of a certain product, okay, and each have their own price. If you try and knock down someone's product or someone's whatever item, merchandise they have that they are trying to sell, if you try to knock down their merchandise to gain in that transaction, gain extra, to buy it for less because you're trying to knock it down, and being untruthful about it, then that is also not allowed. وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. Bakhs, we said, is to basically to suggest something is not valuable, does not have a certain value, or has less value. And also it could be to the same, as in the weight or the measure is less. So it could be re-emphasizing the fact that you should give the full, and also it could be in terms of the quality of what you are buying from them. If you are knocking it down to get it for a better price, cheaper than what it should go for. وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ. Do not do that to the people. أشياءهم, their property, their things that they're bringing to do the transaction with. Amazingly, the ayah does not say وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا الْمُسْلِمِينَ, for example, the believers. What does it say? وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُم. And do not do that to people. Do not be basically do not commit any fraud or any kind of deception in your transaction with the people. Anyone, all the people. وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُم. وَلَا تَعْثَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ مُفْسِدِينَ. Nahi again, further nahi as in forbidding, to tell people not to do certain things. And here, nahi of what? Nahi of the same things that they're doing, but here it is saying what it actually is, or what the consequence of that is. So by us having this kind of transaction, by us being unfair or committing deception and fraud in our transactions, God forbid, if we are doing that, we are leading to mischief on earth, corruption and mischief. وَلَا تَعْثَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ مُفْسِدِينَ. Ta'thaw itself is basically creating corruption or mischief. And mufsideen is further emphasis. So this is another emphasis on this in this ayah, doubling up on something. First, ta'thaw, and then mufsideen. Ta'thaw, as we said, is from atha ya'tu, meaning to create, to ruin things. To, for example, if there's a wall and you destroy it, you ruin it, and it scatters. Okay, that kind of. So creating that on earth, creating corruption and mischief and ruining things, destroying things. And here, وَلَا تَعْثَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ مُفْسِدِينَ. Again, fasad or ifsad is to ruin things and create mischief. And so that saying ta'thaw and mufsidin is further emphasizing how bad this action is, how much of corruption and mischief it creates. And the repeated nahi, لا تنقصوا الناس مكيالا لا تبخسوا الناس لا تعثوا في الأرض. All of those about what? Transactions. And why is it في الأرض مفسدين? One could say, I'm only making a small transaction here in my own little corner. Okay. Nowadays, most transactions are online, yes? Or many transactions, if not most, but many transactions are made online. So I'm sitting from my home, people working remotely, working from their homes. I'm sitting at home and, this little transaction that I'm making, but the reality of it is it's spreading it on earth. And the result of it is creating mischief on earth. وَلَا تَعْثَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ مُفْسِدِينَ. It spreads. It's like fire. Whenever any kind of sin becomes common in a society, it spreads like fire. Everybody starts doing the same thing. And it becomes a cause of all sorts of corruption. So it spreads not just widespread, but in terms of spreading from one area to another. As I said, spreading like fire, not just in terms of the area that it covers, but also the strength of it. You know, fire, as the longer it takes, the stronger the core becomes. And so the same thing here. It starts with a simple transaction, and it leads to other kinds of issues and problems and quarrels, wanting bad for somebody else. The whole idea is, why would you want less for someone else? You know, why do we have to be? And this is essentially a disease, maybe stemming from self-centeredness and selfishness, and not feeling the unity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to feel. What makes me better that I have to be the winner in the transaction? Why can't we have win-win? You know, yes, you can have make some profit, which is permissible, and this is even the person who you're making the transaction with understands, or should understand, that you should make some profit, because that's how you make a living. But to not want you to make a profit is a disease, and to not want them to have any win in the situation is a disease. Unfortunately, I'm saying this with a lot of regret. You might see me with a smile, but the honest truth is, this actually is one of the situations that causes real pain, and it is something that I often wonder, why are we in this state? It is very, very unfortunate that in Muslim societies, this is more widespread than even some, not all, but some non-Muslim communities and societies, where it's almost like no one wants goodness for anyone. No one wants the other one to win in a transaction. Specifically, I'm not speaking about other areas. Comes to generosity, we can be so generous. Hosting guests at our homes, we can be so kind and generous with our guests. Okay, but go with the people and do a business transaction, all of a sudden they're different people. This culture is such wrong culture that is there in many countries and many communities. I've lived it, where the business owner who's selling something, for example, has to swear that I'm not making any money from you, for the person who's buying to feel, okay, now I'm satisfied, I can buy. Or vice versa. It's almost like it's not allowed to even have make a profit. And the seller, it's not like, I just want to make a profit. It's every seller wants to get rich quick, the get rich quick schemes. Almost every seller. So there's mistrust from both parties. One party wants to make the most out of this one transaction, instead of building, a good business that's sustainable with repeat business. And the buyer, on the other hand, has that perhaps perception that they're making, millions out of this transaction. So I have to knock it down to a level where there's absolutely no profit for him. That's when I feel satisfied. So again, this is a problem that is unfortunately widespread, and the ayat are not just reminding them us or the people at the time, and therefore us as the addressees of the Holy Quran, not just reminding us of obedience to God and worshiping the one God and obedience to God in general, but specifically about this example that it is giving us. وَلَا تَعْثَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ مُفْسِدِينَ. It is creating mischief on earth. Again, the next ayah we just mentioned the fact that it's okay to have what is permissible in terms of a prophet. بقية الله خير لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. What remains? Okay, بقية الله. What remains with God, or what remains that is from God. That could be either way. Now, this Baqiyatullah has other suggestions, but we will come to that, inshallah. The literal meaning, if you wish, of this ayah is whatever remains that is from God. Here in the transactions, what he is telling his people is that there are certain things that remain beyond the profit. Basically, the gain out of the transaction is referred to as baqiyah. So let's say that I'm buying and selling, say, wheat, and a kilo of wheat, I buy it for $9, which is the going rate, and sell it for $10, which is the going rate for selling it, wholesale versus retail. So the remaining factor here, which is between the wholesale and the retail, is suggested to be baqiyatullah. It's the permissible profit that remains, which is from God. Now, everything is from God. I hope we understand that. However, when we take more than what He has given us permission to, when we are underselling, underweighing, when we are short selling, any kind of, or deceiving in a transaction to get more than what He has permitted, what God has permitted, this baqiyah is not is not permissible from God. Not that it's He allows it in the takween, not tashri'. In the takween, He has given us free will to choose. I can decide that, okay, in the formation, how He formed this world, He has given us the free will to decide. I can decide in my transaction, I want to be fair, or I want to be oppressive, God forbid. So if I choose to be oppressive in the transaction, He permitted that in the formation, but not legislation. He does not permit any kind of oppression, and therefore, or the first one, rather, I should say, allowed that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed, as He formed the universe, allowed everyone to choose for themselves. And yes, we can choose to be oppressive in a transaction. Does He legislate that? Does He allow that in terms of the law? Of course not. No level of oppression is allowed. And so whatever remains based on what's permissible is baqiyatullah. And whatever we end up taking that is not permissible is not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as in sustenance. And it will not be ours. We can carry it, but it's not ours. We'll be carriers of someone else's wealth, protectors of someone else's wealth, essentially, and we will, wal-'ayadu billah, whoever does it will, suffer the consequences, will carry the burden of it and suffer the consequences, and yet it's not theirs in the first place. When it's not theirs, it's not theirs. No matter what we do, if we take it, we carry it, we think we made an extra 1,000, 10,000, million, 10 million, 100 million, whatever it is that we think we have made, if it's not ours, if it's taken oppressively, if it's usurping someone else's right, it is not ours. It is not our sustenance. So he is clarifying, the Prophet Shu'aib ala nabina wa alayhi salam is telling his people that whatever remains that God has permitted is better for you. Baqiyatullahi khayrun lakum. And we said before, if you recall, better not in the sense that the other one is good and this is better. No, better in the sense that this is the right thing. Okay, khayrun lakum in kuntum mu'minin. Now this condition is in kuntum, if you are a believer, if you are believers, okay. This condition is not a condition for baqiyatullah to be better for you, what remains from God to be better for you. This is a condition for us to understand that baqiyatullahi khayrun lakum. I'm not sure if I confused you or it's clear, but so the ayah is saying whatever remains from God is better for you, and then the condition is there if you are believers. Okay, so is what remains from God better for us only when we are believers, or is it always better for us?
Always.
Ahsantum. So the condition is not to suggest that it's only better for you if you are believers. It is saying if you are believers, you will understand this. So if we are in kuntum mu'minin here is not to condition the fact that God stated, the statement is to condition our understanding. If we are believers, we would know that baqiyatullahi khayrun lakum. And then وَمَا أَنَا عَلَيْكُمْ بِحَفِيظ. Here he is basically both good news and warning are in the same ayah, same line, same statement. He says what is from God is better for you. What is remains that God permits for you is better for you. If you subject yourself to what's better, then you have a better society. You won't have fights, you won't have problems, you won't have nature rebelling against you, and destructions in terms of natural disasters and so on. All of these things are what the good news. And on the other hand, the warning is, I cannot protect you. I cannot. Hafiz is from hifz. Hifz is to protect, to preserve. I cannot preserve, I cannot protect you. I'm a messenger of God. I can guide you, remind you. But if you subject yourself to the consequences of sinful actions and mischief making, then that will happen, and I cannot stop that from happening. I cannot protect you against it, and basically be an obstacle for the whatever is set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a consequence of those actions. وَمَا أَنَا عَلَيْكُمْ بِحَفِيظ. Any comments or any questions so far?
Sheikh, yes, I had a question on two things. One is if you come to the realization that if you had earnings from a source that was questionable or that may not have been done in full measure, like what the verses are teaching us here, how do you resolve that if you're unable to, for example, calculate exactly how much of that earnings was not proper, or find the people that you took their right from. How do you resolve that on the one hand? And is it the same if you did it knowingly or unknowingly? Just curious on what is the Islamic perspective on something like this?
Yes, Hassan. So regarding any kind of wealth that we earn that is questionable, there is a possibility that, or we know versus possibility. If we know that there is, we have somehow taken someone's rights or oppressed them in a transaction, if we can reach them, obviously the solution is simply to give it to them. If you cannot reach them because you don't know who they are, you don't know who the subjects were of the transaction, or because it's not possible for whatever reason, if you cannot, and you know that there is a right for them, then this is where the concept of Radd al-Madalim comes into play, where you pay whatever it is that you know is not yours, belongs to them. You pay it as charity on their behalf.
Is there any charity that you should consider, or there are some charities that you cannot give to, or is it any charity that you can give to?
The Radd al-Madalim is also given to the Hakim al-Shara' or to the Marja.
Okay.
Yeah, so they should be handling it, generally speaking, unless they give in many cases they just give the permission for people to give it to the poor of their choice.
Okay.
But yeah, that has to be paid on behalf of the owner, and the amount should be based on what you know. That is when we do know. Now, if a wealth is mixed and you're not sure how much and what, and some of the transactions were not so good, some of it were okay, and we're not sure. In such situations, you give the khums of it, okay, of the entire wealth. You give the khums of it, besides the khums that is due in terms of the surplus and at the end of your khums year. Besides that, if there is a particular transaction where it's mixed, some could be, there's some mistakes that may have been made and you're not sure and so on. You know that there is a problem, but you don't know what exactly. And then one of the ways of fixing that is to pay the khums of that amount, the entire transaction. That's another one. If one is not sure, they don't have any knowledge of bad transactions or usurping anyone's rights. There's no specific knowledge of that, but they just feel that it could be, I may have somehow, usurped someone's rights without knowing. If it's of that nature, then generally giving charity on behalf of people who we may have taken their rights, that is something that we can give, but it's not, obviously it's not an obligatory act, but it is recommended in general to give charity to and counted against anything that we may have done wrong transactions, that we have may wronged somebody with them. It is in fact one of the things that are typically written in the wasiyah, as we write in the will that normally are the wills that are prepared for people to fill. One of the fields that we put for people to put, to add figures to it, is Rad Madalim. In this case, they're putting general, so there is specific Rad Madalim and general. Specific in the sense that you know of transactions that something went wrong, but you don't know the person, or you can't reach the person. Okay, so you know in this transaction there's $100. It's not mine, it's someone else's. Okay, but I don't know who it is or how I can get to them, or there's no way of getting to them. Then I pay that as Rad Madalim. But there's general Rad Madalim, meaning I'm not sure if I'm not 100% sure, or I'm not even aware of any transactions that I have, wronged anyone in those transactions and usurped any of their rights. But I decide that I want to pay a certain amount. I don't know. Let's say one in his wasiyah puts, I'm going to pay 10,000, 100,000, whatever it is, based on what they're leaving behind. They put a figure as Rad Madalim in general that they wish. Obviously, that would be out of the third that is allowed for us to do the wasiyah on. So that is another thing. In general, a general Rad Madalim for things that we're not sure about, or we don't have an actual knowledge of.
Thank you.
Another, yes.
Baqiyatullah, the title of Sahib al-Amr, is got
Yes,
anything to do with this word, or is it different?
Yes, Ahsant. I was just about to share that. Thank you for that reminder or question. Baqiyatullah, one of the applications of this ayah or this title is regarding the Imam of the time, Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. And we have many hadith that confirm that it's not a weak concept. It's a very, very strong concept. So some, they say this has to do with transactions. This is just the benefit or the profit that remains, that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do you bring that concept of an individual, a person who is appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What does this have to do with that, for instance? The answer is Quran in many cases, not just this one. In many cases, Quran has multiple layers of application, and we have many ahadith from the Prophet ﷺ and from Ahlul Bayt that Quran has layers, batnun fi batn. So one meaning does not nullify another meaning, and so there might be various meanings. Depends on the context. So if we're speaking of transactions and business, Baqiyatullah is that whatever is permitted, or whatever is permissible in that transaction as a profit. But if we're speaking of leadership, for example, okay, political leadership, or leadership in general, guidance and leadership, then Baqiyatullah is the one that God kept for us. Baqiya is what remains, what is preserved and remains. And so what God kept for us, what God preserved for us, what God permitted for us in the transaction, permitted this profit. In the leadership, He permitted this leadership. Okay, not that other leaderships or presidents who are elected, for example, are not permitted to have to be presidents, or for us to follow them as presidents, but not to consider them as God's representatives on earth. That is not permissible. No leader should consider or assume divine authority except prophet unless they're appointed by God. So prophets and their successors, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. And so that is Baqiyatullah in that context. And we have again multiple ahadith that confirm the fact that this is one of the titles or one of the applications. Therefore, it becomes a title for the Imam of our time, Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif.
Isn't it synonymous with Hujjatullah, or aren't these Hujjatullah is a representative of Allah? So if you were
Yeah,
to translate it with regards to the title of the 12th Imam, Baqiyatullah, what would you say it is?
Baqiyatullah, again, what remains from
What
Allah.
remains? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So Baqiya is remaining. Hujjah is the proof from Allah. And Baqiyatullah is what remains from Allah. So they are synonyms in terms of who they're referring to. You know, in terms of the Imam of our time, in that sense, yes. But they're not synonyms in terms of the meanings of the Baqiyya and Hujjah. So Baqiyatullah and Hujjatullah in the context of the leadership is the Imam of our time. However, in the terms do have different meanings. Hujjah is the proof, and the Baqiyya is remaining, you know, from baqa to stay, to remain. So what is kept, okay, he kept him, he remains. So that is Baqiyatullah in this context is the Imam of the time, Ajalullah Ta'ala Faraja. Next ayah, ayah 87. قالوا, now the response of his people. They said to him, قالوا يا شعيب, they said, Shu'aib, أصلاتك تأمرك أن نترك ما يعبد آباؤنا. So obviously he was praying. Okay, so the difference between him and his people was his prayers, his connection with God. So they recognized that. They acknowledge that he prays, and almost you could here suggest you know, a separation, you know, between religion and state, in the sense that you pray, but what your prayers shouldn't make you want us to change our lifestyle, or, you know, forbid us from following our fathers. Now, here they suggested that they were worshipping different deities to who he was worshipping. He was worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and praying, doing a certain ritual of prayers, purifying and praying. On the other hand, they were suggesting that they were worshipping something that their fathers worshipped. He said, so that his command to them was what? You worship God, you have no deities other than God. They're saying we are following our fathers in worshipping whatever they worshipped. The way they put it is that your prayer is the one that's making you give us those commands. So they're questioning him, is it your prayers that is commanding you? In other words, is it through prayers that you feel the need or the urge to tell us or to command us to not worship or to leave the worshipping of what our parents or ancestors did? Ta'muruka commands, and natruka, that we let go, we leave. the worshipping of ما يعبد آباؤنا, whatever our fathers worshipped. It doesn't have to necessarily be, again, idols or specific idols they were speaking about here. Following the way of life of their ancestors, the rules that the code that they had in their society, as I mentioned, if you recall, regarding the people at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had a code of life. Some of it was had come from prophets, but a lot of it was through their own assumptions. So therefore, it's called ignorance, jahiliyyah, because it's not based on knowledge; it's based on ignorance. And the best part is they assume it is godly. They assume it's worship. They assume it has to be this way. There's no, having cultural things, as long as they don't contradict, religion or the worshiping of God, is okay. But to be so stuck to them that we feel like this, it has to be this way, and any other way is not acceptable, and therefore, in some cases, causing divisions, causing problems, not allowing marriages, so many things that happen as a result of cultures that have nothing to do with the religion, but it's made like it's religious. It's a ritual. And so this is one of the examples that they're saying to him, your prayer is commanding you that we should let go of the worshipping of what our ancestors worshipped. Not necessarily how, like, we sit down and, let's say, giving sacrifice for idols, for instance. That is one. Another is all the rituals, all the culture that is not godly, not from the Almighty. And the second part is أو أن نفعل في أموالنا ما نشاء. Or is it your prayer that is telling you that we should not be allowed to do whatever we want to do with our money? نفعل, we do, في أموالنا, with our money, ما نشاء, whatever we want. So we want to take more, take less, use up this guy's right, whatever. This is separation, as I mentioned. You go and pray. What does that have to do with our transactions? This is our money. We do whatever we want. That's their way. Unfortunately, many people may not say it, but they act in this way. When it comes to business, forget about God, religion, generosity, kindness, fairness, all of that. Forget about all of that. We just follow how it was done before, how in this field it's done, and we justify every action or transaction for the sake of the extra profit. Many, unfortunately, live their lives in this way. So this was, again, the response of his people. This is what we should reflect on. Are we in that category? God forbid. And here, at the end, they are not confirming, they are mocking, basically, him in a questioning manner, that you're telling us all of that, yet you should be إنك لأنت الحليم الرشيد, that you are forbearing and one who has matured, one who has reached their rushd, their maturity. So and Halim, also one of the meanings of Halim is not just forbearing, but also one who uses their intellect, which is part of which is somehow how forbearance happens. We are capable of being forbearing when we use our intellect. We use our mind. We give people the benefit of the doubt. We consider ourselves in that situation. How would we like to be dealt with? Therefore, so all, in using our intellect allows us to be more forbearing. Therefore, Halim is also one who uses their intellect more, their aql, and not rush into allowing their anger or ghadab to overtake them and react or make a decision and act in a way that is oppressive. Rushedly, rather use the intellect and think about it and be forbearing and forgiving. So Halim and Rashid, beautiful titles that they are giving him. However, they're giving him in a questioning manner. Like you should be this, and yet you are telling us that we should not be following our fathers worshipping, and therefore not follow them and follow the way of the society where transactions are made separate of fairness, but separate of consciousness of God, because they knew. It's not like they didn't know that what they're doing is wrong in a way. He is already telling them baqiyatullahi khayrun lakum. If they didn't have a concept of permissible and non-permissible and what is from God and sustenance and so on, that statement would make no sense. It makes any sense because because they're aware of it somehow. As we say, deep down, they know that this is not right. They know that giving less is wrong. You need to give the full. They know deception or any kind of knocking down of someone's property and therefore not giving them the value that they deserve. They know that this is wrong, but their justification is that keep it separate. This is our money, we deal with it how we want. Worship is different, almost like some people. When it comes to the mosque, even hijab is in the mosque. Outside, there's no need for that. We come and give in the mosque. We sacrifice, we give, we feed people, and so on. But in transactions, it's okay to take the rights of other people and so on. So this is something we need to be very careful about, because it is very common, and it's not just the people of Madian. It continues on even in our time. And an important thing to try and achieve is those beautiful titles that this ayah ends with, Al-Halim and Al-Rashid. Those qualities, even the wrongdoers, oppressors, the bad people appreciate those beautiful qualities. And obviously in the hereafter they would be seen and they would be much more visible and much more significant. I often say these are like the badges. In this world we have certain badges or certain awards. If you get to that level, you get this award. In the hereafter we have different types of awards. We have the Musallin, Al-Shakirin, those who establish prayers, those who are grateful, those who are Halim, As-Sabirin, the ones who are patient and persistent, and all of these beautiful titles that we should inshallah strive to earn in this world. Any comments? I think we...
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Sheikh, I have one thing. One of the brother have asked a question regarding the mal which you don't know who is this mal is. I want to just make sure from you, I want to confirm it from you that is this you said that you have to give it to like you have to take the khums from it, right? And what is the definition of mali majhulul malik? Do you have any idea about this?
Majhul al-Malik.
Yeah.
Majhul al-Malik means the owner is not known.
Yeah, is this not going to put it in the same category of mali majhulul malik?
Which one?
The question was asked that if you don't know that what is I have take someone's haq from this in the, someone haq is in this mal. I'm not sure about it. I'm not sure that this mal is 100% pak or not. So you give the answer that this should be you have to give the khums and one more thing you have added. I just forgot it. If you can add that one.
Rad Madalim.
Radd Mazalim, yes. It's Radd
Yeah.
Mazalim or Mali Majul Malik because I think this will gonna fall in the category of Mali Majul Malik. If you can correct me, please.
Yeah, Rad Madalim is when you know what it is and how much it is, and you cannot reach the owner. It's not. You know that there is somebody that owns this property, this money, whatever it is, but you cannot reach those people.
Yeah, the question was same that you don't know that guy whose mal is this. So you give the definition that you have to take the khums or you have to give Radd Mazalim to the
No, khums is when it's mixed. Some of
Yeah.
it is your money, some of it is someone else's, but you don't know who, and somehow it got mixed. Okay, so
I got it. That point I got it. That
yeah,
you have to give the khums if that specific mal is mixed with your halal mal. So
yeah,
if it is not mixed with your halal mal, then you have to give it to in the niyyah of Radd Mazalim or Mali Majhul Malik.
yeah. Radd al-Madalim is it's the title of what you pay. Mali Majhul al-Malik is the title of the money itself. So when we give it, it's Radd al-Madalim. But the title of the money that it is, it's referred to as Majhul al-Malik, as in we don't know who the owner is.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Ahsan. Inshallah. So I think we should, if we start next ayah, we will not be able to finish. قال يا قوم أرأيتم. So this is the response. The next ayah is the response from Nabiullah Shu'aib ala nabina wa alayhi salam. However, I think in the interest of time, we won't start that ayah. Nevertheless, any other comments or questions?
Maybe we can pause inshallah. I don't see any other in the chat also, so I think inshallah we can resume next week.
Inshallah. Regarding I wanted to add something here. Unfortunately, sometimes people have a misconception, especially when it comes to khums being paid on the mixed money that is mixed. Okay, so some people think that it's okay to go and say, for instance, get involved or do a transaction that is not permissible. Okay, I don't know, buy a lottery ticket and try and win the lottery, whatever it is. Okay, or have an alcohol business and earn haram in that business, or other types of haram transactions, and therefore we can do that and then go and to pay the khums, and the rest is halal money. I hope that we understand that that's not how it works.
Stand for that. Thank you.
Yeah,
It's very important.
yeah. So it is. I've heard it from people, unfortunately, at times that I had to clarify. That is, you're still bringing haram money into your home, feeding haram money to yourself and your family, and that's not how it works. That the mixed is a transaction that somehow some things may have gone wrong in the transaction, and we realize, okay, there's a problem there, but I am not sure how much of it exactly, and so on. So then one can purify it in that manner. However, in getting involved in a transaction that's haram knowingly from the beginning is a great sin, and it's defiance. It's one of the greatest sins is to undermine sins and actually defy the Creator, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, knowingly and openly. That is something that we should never even consider. And with Radd al-Madhalim, and just to clarify, رد المظالم is known as هو المال الذي أخذ من صاحبه ظلما. It is a money that has been taken from the owner in oppression or without their permission, like غصب, or even somehow stolen or something. Now it's not known who it is or how you can reach them and so on. دي مال مجهول المالك هو المال الذي يعلم أن له مالكا لكن لا يعرف من هو. You know that there's no ظلم in the situation. There's no oppression. There's no taking by force or stealing. Some money is found, some property is found, but the owner is not known. That's just to clarify the difference in terms of terminology, but how it's dealt with is very similar.
Thank you, Sheikh. Also, on this one, I don't know if it'll be a quick answer or it might need to be the next time. If someone realizes that, let's say they had taken someone's wealth, and the value of that wealth was, let's just put a hypothetically like $1,000, okay?
Yeah.
5 years ago, $1,000 is not the same as today. Because we know the value of money decrease over time because of inflation and other. So if you do get to realize that you need to return this, should it be the same 1,000 or should it be 1,000 plus whatever the value or whatever the equivalent value is in today's terms? Because it's not fair for that person to get some, because if he had 1,000 at the time that it was due to him or her, he could have done whatever he needed to do with it. But today you're giving him essentially something worth less. So it's not interest that you're adding to it, but you're giving the equivalent, right?
Yeah, this is why I often tell people the basic interest is not necessarily riba.
Right.
Because it is adjustment because of the value of money.
Right.
Versus commodities and versus gold. In this situation, although there is no specific fatwa about, and I have to be clear here, so I'm not giving a fatwa here, and I'm not. So there's no specific fatwa that it has to be different, because the maraja are stuck with a situation that they can. We have a currency that does not no longer represents gold, no longer represents commodities.
Right.
And so the value of it is so volatile, and with such currency, and that they allowed this currency in the first place, or allowed transacting in these currencies based on it being backed with commodities.
Right.
So it's a bit of a difficult situation in our economy, and considering the Islamic rulings and fatwas. This is why often, if you look at if you hear about Ayatollah Khouei from his students, often he was quoted to have said in some transactions or questions about transactions, he had said, go and ask Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, the Shaheed al-Sadr, the author of our economy, اقتصادنا. He was very well versed in iqtisad, and he had done a comparative study between Islamic economy and modern economy, and how how we can bring the two together, understanding today's banking and so on. So there are a lot of factors to consider. So again, I tell people, if we want to be fair,
Right.
you have to consider the value of the money at the time. Like somebody wrote his wife mahar, that is, let's say 15,000. I remember this number from a specific case I was dealing with in Vancouver. 15,000 Iraqi dinar at the time that he married his wife. 20 years later, back then, 15,000 could have been a piece of land, an apartment. The value of it was a little piece of land in their city, or an apartment in their city. Okay. Today, 15,000, if I'm not mistaken, it's like $100. Those of you who have been to Ziyara recently should know. I think it's $100. It does not even buy, I don't know, dinner for a big family, for instance, or it does not feed a family for a week, let's say. Okay, versus what it could have fed a family for 2 years or 10 years. Okay, so this is where I told them back then, I said, you could argue that it is 15,000 dinar, and just give her that and face her on the day of judgment, or you could give her what was the value of that money. At the time, it was equivalent to gold, or equivalent to commodities, whatever, the buy power.
Right.
So that's how it should be. The fair way is to give what the value of it would be. And we hear so many. In fact, if it's part of the business, then you should give it with profit of the business. Even I'll give you an example, and I'm hoping I'm not keeping you guys long, but there was a story of an individual who had somehow he ended up with money from his basically his brother's money ended up with him, but he did not have access. His brother passed, and his nephews, or he had a nephew who he could not reach him at the time. So the nephew was in very bad situation financially and so on. Eventually, when he found him 10 years, 15 years later, or whatever time it took, when he found him, he didn't just give him that money. He gave him a portion of the business which he had established with that money, or partially with that money. So, yes, he worked hard and so on. He was working on it, but this is a money that could have earned money with. So, I mean, that is the more cautious approach, that it wasn't your business. It made you money. That's how it should be. But the least is to give the value of the money at the time.
Thank you, Sheikh. That's good clarification, because it makes sense in my mind, at least, that
Yes.
it would be just the same value, because you're basically giving them less value depending on
Ahsan.
each time. Yeah.
Inshallah, we'll conclude with that. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Allahumma salli ala
Allahumma salli ala
Muhammad
Muhammad.
wa ala Muhammad.